4 years ahead of me. Mike, yes, on those guys. Yeah, I haven't seen Mark forever. Sells beer. Everyone stand, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We get going. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to indivisible. Okay, first thing on the agenda is approve the agenda. Does anyone have any changes or additions? Okay, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Seconded by Dave Brusick. All in favor say aye. 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 Any opposition? Okay, the agenda is approved 4-0. Okay, first thing on the agenda, acceptance of a CenterPoint Partnership Grant. I'd like to introduce Todd Norgren from CenterPoint Energy.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I am Todd Norgren with CenterPoint Energy. I'm an area manager for them, and New Prague is in my territory. The Community Partnership Grant Program offers an opportunity for CenterPoint Energy to partner with cities we serve. We have partnered with communities supporting our shared commitment to safety while delivering safe, reliable natural gas for over 143 years. Since 2003, the program has exceeded $1.2 million in donations and helped fund over 632 projects throughout communities that we serve. Through the grant program, we are able to help cities leverage local funds to purchase needed safety equipment or support safety projects that are important to your community. I am pleased to present the City of New Prague with a community partnership grant for $400 that will be used to purchase roadway emergency signals and signs for the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, CenterPoint. And, we appreciate it.
The fun part of the job, being able to help support safety efforts in the community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that acceptance of receiving the check, I guess I'll make a motion to accept the $400 grant from CenterPoint. Second by Pat Scripture. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes. 5-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we are fortunate to have the First Stop Shop here from Scott County. We've got Stacy Craigs and Tracy Cervenka. You guys are welcome to come up and give us your presentation on the countywide customer service initiative.
All right, thanks for having us here tonight. As the mayor said, we are here to talk about a countywide customer service strategy plan. And my name is Tracy Cervenka. I am here from Scott County. With me tonight is Stacy Craigs from the First Stop Shop. Our third presenter was unable to be here tonight as she is ill, so you have just the two of us, and we'll do our best. Tonight, we are just going to give a brief history of the First Stop Shop, talk a little bit about the Carlson School and the recommendations that they gave us, and also talk about a customer service strategy plan. Several years ago, Scale leadership decided that education was an important reason for Scale's existence. The Transportation and Economic Development Committee, or TED, which is a committee of Scale, took that direction and developed different educational modules. And starting in 2009, I'm going to move this forward just a little bit so I can see what I'm talking about. Starting in 2009, the educational modules that went out to each of the cities and to the county and the townships talked about transportation corridors. And then we transitioned into land use and transportation, and over the last few years, we've been focusing more on economic development as the priorities of Scale have evolved that way. So first, a little bit of history of the First Stop Shop. Back in 2009, each of the cities, as well as Scott County, adopted the Unified Plan Charter, and that charter was The goal of that charter is to develop and implement a countywide economic development strategy and integrated land use and transportation plan with the goal of having enough jobs within Scott County for 50% of our labor force to be able to work within the county by 2030. Then in 2011, TED formed the Economic Development Strategy Group to help us identify specific strategies to help further that goal. That group was consisted of members of the business community, of the commercial real estate industry. We also had a member from St. Francis Regional Medical Center and from a school district. That group met about 6 times, and they gave us quite a series of recommendations. One of those did focus on a public sector culture, to build and promote a culture in the public sector with a priority for customer service, timeliness, accountability, and creative solutions, to incorporate business understanding and education as part of the Scale Legos educational program, as well as to create an educational program for staff to focus on business needs and perspectives. After that, we contracted with the Carlson School to have them help us with ways to implement those recommendations from the Economic Development Strategy Group. So the recommendations from both of those groups were given to Scale and then also to TED, and both of those groups endorsed having the First Stop Shop. And in November of 2012, the CDA expanded its focus to include economic development in a larger way, and they hired Stacy Crakes to be our first full-time business development manager. In addition, Renee Christensen works with her as a half-time business development analyst. And here we are today.
I'll try and lean forward. One thing we always want to try and reiterate whenever we come out and meet with you is about the jobs goal. And Tracy already mentioned it earlier, but we want to try and put it into perspective so you can see the numbers in front of you as far as what it is that we're talking about here. That 50% resident workforce goal by 2030 actually equates to approximately an additional 37,000 jobs based on the projections at this time from the state demographers. So over the next 18 years, that came out to just over 2,000 jobs per year, which is quite a few jobs. It's a very competitive market, and it's certainly a stretch goal, but it's something that we continue to strive towards. So the First Stop Shop had 3 primary areas of focus when we were first created. The database, creating a database of information for responding to pursuits, helping to respond to pursuits, and then also this customer service culture. And we're here to talk about the last one, but you should have a handout that looks something like this that shows you just a quick update on kind of where we're at with the first 2 items as far as the database and the pursuits go from 2013. So you can take a look at that when you have a chance. So the Carlson team was brought back in this past fall to help us with the project focused on customer service. And really, we wanted to bring them in for a couple different reasons. One was to get an unbiased view of how we're doing overall within the county, not from my perspective, but from an outside group's perspective. And then the second reason was just to really try and help us figure out where to start. This has been the hardest thing to tackle out of those first 3 areas of focus. So they came in to help us develop a plan of where to start. So they started their project in September of 2013 and then finished in December, so it was about a 3-month project. The first phase of their project was to come in and gain an understanding of what it is that each of our communities are already doing. And they did go around and meet with each of the cities. They also met with, or at least had discussions with, some of the businesses in each of the communities, provided that the city gave them some businesses that they could reach out to. And then they took all of that information and they reviewed it and analyzed it, and then they came up with their recommendations that we're going to share tonight. So overall, the general consensus was there is room for improvement, and we do still have an opportunity to set ourselves apart and really come up with a competitive advantage, which both of those things were outcomes from that scale economic development strategy group in 2011. So we wanted to share some of the key messages that came out of those meetings with the brokers and the business owners. And really it revolved around three kind of major themes. The first one is transparency. Getting as much information as they can up front is going to be very helpful, and making sure that the processes that the cities have in place to be providing that information up front is very important in any of these projects. The second one is partnering to get things done versus being strong-armed. So we've heard different terms as far as being strong-armed, being enforced upon. Ultimately, we want to try and make the outcome beneficial to all parties. So it really needs to be a partnership. And then the last one is streamlining those processes. Like we kind of mentioned, even with the first one, as far as information up front, we want to make sure that all of the processes are as clearly documented as they can be, laid out as clearly as they can be, and that there's, again, no surprises going through those different processes. So here's some of the specific feedback that they provided. I wanted to just share some of this with you. I won't go through all of it. On the back of that first page that I pointed out, this is all of the feedback that we received through the Carlson project. So you're welcome to take a look through that when you have a chance, if you're interested in seeing what the other comments were. But really, you're going to see those key themes come out of each of these. So the early stage input from the DRC prior to a business finalizing their plans to help them save time and money. Feedback of feeling strong-armed, the implication that if you're not going to give us X, then you're not going to get your permit. And at that point, they were so far along in the process that they really had no choice but to say, okay. Issues with interpreting zoning and ordinances consistently. Over the course of several months, the business kept getting individual surprises. So in this particular instance, they were looking at a approximately $1.2 to $1.3 million charge from a utility company for a water connection. And then at the end of the process, found out about a $70,000 Parks and Rec fee. And then also had the city come back to them the last week of the project to say, hey, we need another 10 feet of easement around the sides of your business property. So needless to say, we've had some follow-up on this particular one since then, and some of these things were resolved. But at the time that Carlson was out meeting with the businesses, this is right where this business was. So I am happy to say that $1.2 million water connection fee was dramatically reduced. And then the final one that I like to share too, because I think we forget about this sometimes, is just that a small business owner is only going to build once or twice in their lifetime. And the city is dealing with this on a daily basis. So sometimes those smaller business owners may need some additional assistance going through the process. And they're asking that they just be treated with respect. So based on that feedback, you might be looking at that feedback, and I'll just go back to it, and saying, maybe this does or doesn't resonate in your community. A couple points that we want to make about that. One is that even if you look at this and you say, well, we've never had any of those issues here, the problem becomes that if your surrounding communities are facing those issues, it can negatively impact what's happening down here. If brokers start to gain that perception that we're doing things similarly through all of our communities, then even if you haven't done that by association, you're going to get lumped into, well, that's not a place that we necessarily want to be doing business. So that's one reason that we wanted to bring it up. Now, I'm not saying that there's not something from that list that's came from your community, because there is one. So just keep that in mind. But I think what the takeaway is from that is that there's always going to be room for improvement, and there's always going to be different perspectives, and really perception is reality. So in what these businesses are telling us, even if that's not necessarily what is happening, they're the ones who are out there spreading that word that that's happening, and we want to try and make sure that we're stopping that up front, so that we can actually go out and have that competitive advantage of being known as a community and a county where people do want to do business and where we're business friendly. So the Carlson recommendations, after they gathered all of this information, really came down to these 3 different steps. And the first one was to establish a cultural expectation for customer service on a county-wide level. So we've done that through the scale group. The second step was then to take that vision and apply it within each city. And then the third step is really to establish a way that we can routinely be measuring what kind of progress we're making and what kind of success we're seeing. So they suggested 7 different workshops. The first 3 were the scale leadership workshops to come up with that vision. The second 3, or the next 3, I should say, are the city workshops focused on process, structure, and personality. And then they had one final annual scale workshop that they suggested that we have just to do a check on outcomes and see where things are at. So where we're at today, we've completed those 3 scale leadership workshops in January through April. And then we actually revised our plan for the future workshops based on the input from those. And I'll share a little bit with you about that in a couple minutes. So first, I wanted to share with you some of the outcomes from those scale workshops. And really, this is where we like to have our person who's not here tonight share their perspective, because we've had a business owner doing that for each of these presentations, and they can really add a lot as far as what their personal perspectives are on what came out of those sessions. And they were involved in all of the sessions as well, so it's unfortunate that Michelle got sick. But ultimately, this is the mission statement that we came up with out of those 3 sessions. And really what I want to focus on are those highlighted words, because those are the words that we ended up talking a lot about is, trusted partnerships, being confident, treated fairly and responsively. And then last minute, but in the last session, we didn't have collaboratively in there, and it was felt very strongly that it does need to be a collaborative effort working with the businesses. So moving forward, this is what we've adopted. This is what we would plan to move forward with at the First Stop Shop on a county-wide level, saying in Scott County, we are going to set ourselves apart by working collaboratively with businesses to build trusted partnerships where owners and developers can be confident that they are treated fairly and responsibly. So you should have this diagram in front of you as well, and mine's not in color. But really what it came down to was 3 major groups. It came down to people, resources, and messages. And the people revolves around what we want our people to be like. Really, that's that attitude and tone type focus. And then resources are the tangible things that we need to do to help to achieve this culture. And then messages has been referred to as marketing, and really spreading the word as far as what those key messages are that we want to be known for within Scott County. And then you can see where those overlap as far as the different areas that we need to focus on with, having customer service friendly processes. And really making sure that our staff has bought into this and they're embodying and living this culture. It's not just a means of, we're going to say that we're going to do this. It's a means of actually going out and doing it and living it every day. So we also came up with these different strategies, and you'll have this worksheet on the back of that one, I believe, or in your packet, that focuses on what the scale service values and strategies are and how they compare to how the customer service values and strategies compare to the scale values and strategies. So really, you know, there are 6 high-level values that we said that we wanted to see with all city employees and representatives by the time we are done with this training. And really, that's building relationships and partnerships, transparency, responsiveness, being efficient and accessible and knowledgeable. And then the 4 high-level strategies to help make these values attainable came down to role responsibility, understanding what kind of what your particular role is for each of the staff members in the cities, as well as elected officials and appointed officials, transparent processes, defining best practices that we might be able to share amongst the communities, and then also focusing on attitude training. So where we are next, we've already completed those scale leadership workshops. We've been in the process of completing these officials workshops with councils like yours over the last 2 months or so. So we're down to this one and one more left. And then our goal is to move into staff position workshops in which we would get together different staff groups from each of the cities and bring them together to talk about where can we share best practices based on what their particular interaction is with the customer. And really try and identify what those are, talk about the pain points that were identified by the businesses, identify any other pain points that might be out there, and then talk about role responsibility. And then we would take that information and go back to individual city workshops to say, now that we have kind of this toolbox created, what can we bring back to each of your cities? And really let the cities talk about how they want to incorporate the different results from the first workshop as far as best practices go. And then we talked about having some attitude and tone training, which we may or may not have a technical college come and help with at this point in time. And then we would have a scale annual review and planning workshop like Carlson had recommended once a year, just to say where are we at and what do we need to do to keep moving forward. And then hopefully the goal would be to be back here early next year. I would probably say spring or early summer again, about a year from now, to say, you know, here's how this whole process has gone, here's what the outcomes were, here's what the results have been so far, and really talk about what your roles are as elected officials in moving this training forward. So what we're here tonight to ask from you is that we really would like to have your support in this whole initiative. You know, I know that the city of New Prague was identified as having some best practices that people want to build upon. So having participation from the city would be helpful in moving some of those things forward, as well as, you know, maybe there's some things that you'll pick up along the way. Being engaged, we would ask that, you know, we're going to try and keep the sessions manageable. We do realize that it's a time commitment on behalf of the staff, but trying to encourage staff being engaged would be much appreciated. And so that's encouraging staff participation. I kind of lumped them together. But ultimately, you know, we feel that this is only going to work if we all buy into it from a county level, and it needs to start from the top down. So that's ultimately why we wanted to come and meet with you and share what our plan is and really try and gain your support. So with that, that's the last slide that we have, and I don't know if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Stacy or Tracy at this time? Anything? Okay. So basically, you're going to meet with one more, obviously, a council, and then you're going to start these staff meetings. Now, are these staff meetings, are they going to be held at, like, New Prague? Are they going to be held in New Prague, or are they going to be held at the First Stop Shop? I mean, what's the game plan on that? I mean, to try to get involvement on it, you know, obviously, the easier you make it, you know, for the staff to be able to make those meetings obviously is key. So I didn't know what your thoughts were on that.
Right. The conversation so far has been to try and find a centralized location that would make it as easy as possible for the staff to be there. There's been a lot of discussion about that because Carlson came back to us and said, just do city sessions. And then through those 3 scale workshops, that's where it came out that people thought it would be a good idea to get the different staff groups together. Well, once we decided we were going to do that, then they started saying, well, you can't have all my staff groups because we need to have some people here. So we already are running into some slight logistical issues with that, but the goal is that we would have, hopefully one person from each staff group within each city that would be able to join us for a 2-hour session at some point in a location that wouldn't be too far from home. So we're still working through exactly what that looks like, but I would say even if maybe they can't take 2 hours and travel on either side, well then, come for the first half at least so that we can get some input and some perspective from your community as we're going ahead and trying to roll this out throughout the county.
Is there any thought of trying video conferencing or?
That's
Any
a
of those?
possibility. I think we can do that at the transit station. No? Maybe. Yeah?
No, I just was wondering, I mean, obviously with technology, even if you had people come in on conference calls and had the material in front of them, just to get more participation, because at
Right.
least my opinion is the more people you can get involved, at the city level, the more acceptance you're going to get.
Absolutely. And that's a good idea because then if the concern was if people come up to the counter and you need to step away, you can't do that if you're not physically here. But if you're on a conference call and you need to get pulled away for a little bit, then that would work. So it's certainly something that I will note, and we'll see if we can make that happen too.
Are you also looking at just having the staff, let's say, okay, we're going to have city administrators at this meeting and planning people at this meeting and finance people or, operational people at this meeting? Or are you trying to get a blend or try to have all groups at the one meeting at a time?
The staff position groups could be separated out like that, and that's what the goal would be as far as those go. Not to say that we couldn't have an administrator and a planner and a finance person all as part at the same time, and then we break out into those small groups. And then ultimately, after we do those, that's when we would come back to the city and we'd try and get all of the city people together, regardless of what their staff positions are, to say, here's what came out of each of these groups. How does this work within your community, and how can we try and make some improvements if there's room for improvement?
So the ultimate goal is to get to all staff,
Yes.
okay.
Although we're focusing, I should say, there was a lot of discussion too about whether or not we should focus on those people who are dealing with residential concerns versus business concerns. And at this point in time, we're rolling it out focused on business concerns in the development process to try and keep it more manageable. But the hope is that once we do that, we'll see some obviously positive feedback and good things come out of that that'll trickle down into those other areas within the city.
Okay. How about some boards and commissions like the EDA or some of those? Are those planning to be educated in this process?
They are. At least they would have the opportunity of attending. I would hope that, if they could make it. I know a lot of times the EDAs are made up of business people who can't necessarily get away during the day, and it's harder for them to attend. But by all means, if we can get some of them to be involved, that would be ideal, because we really want to try and get the business perspective as part of this as well. Right now, we have them put in with the developers, businesses, and brokers under the staff position workshops, but that's not to say that, if your city in particular wanted to invite people too, when it comes back to the city, then we could do that as well.
Yeah. Any other questions besides me?
wondering the same as you, which staff are going to be part of this, and she's answered that.
Okay. Anything else? Well, I thank you very much, Stacy and Tracy, for your presentation. I know the success that Scale has had in other endeavors, so I assume that we're going to see the same kind of success in this endeavor. And you know, I think if you have any other questions or issues, you're more than welcome to come again and address the council and give your support.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, alley improvements. Glenn, are you taking this?
I am. We've had some changes to the alley improvements next to St. Wenceslaus property there between 2nd Street Northeast and School Street. The first one is the agreement between the city of New Prague and St. Wenceslaus Church to widen the alley and also widen the approach on 2nd Street Northeast by, which would be by the hospital there. That request came on June 3rd as a petition to the city to incorporate it into this year's rework project. As you read through your packet, the money that it would cost to make these improvements were all paid or will be paid by the church, and there'd be no extra cost to the city except for the fact that we are incorporating it into the project itself. So we have the agreement between St. Wenceslaus Church and the City of New Prague, and then also a resolution that is directing the modification of the existing contract for an additional $18,643.37. And then the amendment to SEH for the engineering, the added engineering fees, again, which would be paid by St. Wentz. The recommendation is for the council to authorize this agreement and the resolution for changing the existing contract and also the amendment to the engineering fees.
Yeah. Any questions?
I did want to note that St. Wentz did actually pay their fees for the project on Thursday or Friday. I forget
Friday.
what day
Oh,
it
okay,
was.
so they're all prepaid and
They
everything?
did prepay unless there's any major changes in there. We'll reimburse if need be or look
Right,
for additional.
So they're just going to pay actual fees, and then when all said and done, we'll reimburse if that's higher, okay?
All right.
And this should be no issue. Have we even started on the alley yet?
Yes, we have started on the alley, but what they've started on is things that were already in the plan.
Okay.
So if this is okayed by the council, then it would just mean making the alley wider than what the original plan was. The original plan was to make the alley the same width as it was, which would have been 14 and a half feet was the existing alley. They're asking for it to be 24 feet total. It'd be 22 and a half feet of asphalt, and then they asked for a concrete curb, we'll call it a curb, but it's more of a drive-over, just to designate the difference between the alley and the parking spaces in the parking lot for when they redo the parking lot. And again, that's all paid, that will be paid for by the church.
Okay.
And you're moving some electrical boxes too?
Yep,
And where would those be moved to?
they're just going to be moved a little bit to the east and out of the sidewalk. Right now, they're sitting right in the sidewalk, but because of widening that approach on 2nd Street, they're actually, it's going to turn out pretty good. It's going to come out of the sidewalk and end up more into, I'll say into their parking lot or into behind the sidewalk itself and a little bit to the east.
Is that what they were working on already?
Yes,
In the,
Yep.
by the hospital there, right?
exactly. Yep. Yeah, the minute the church made the commitment, so then the electrical tore into it to stay ahead of the game.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess I'll make a motion to approve the change in the, or approve the agreement between St. Wentz and the City of New Prague. Also change the make the change order with Chard, and then also Amendment 1 with SEH. We'll all do it on one motion.
Second.
I got a second by Mark Bartuszczyk. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you. Taking this one also, Glenn?
I am. Pipeline agreement with the railroad, which is at the west end of Third Street Northwest. This was always part of the plan. It's extending the sanitary sewer out of Third Street into the newer 18-inch sewer that runs parallel with the railroad tracks. For some reason, it took this long to get the contract or the agreement back from the railroad. Unfortunately, to keep things moving, the agreement got signed by the mayor and by the city administrator, so this is more just hopefully to get your formal approval on this. Again, nothing's changed with this at all. The agreement was first put in this third week in January of 2014, and we just received it back from them signed on June 11th. We have no clue why it took so long, but this is nothing different than what was part of the original plan. We just were hoping to have this agreement 2 months ago.
Any questions?
I move to forward with the agreement.
Okay, we got a,
We need a motion, I see.
yeah, we got a motion by Mark Bartuszczyk for.
Second.
Second by Pat Scripture. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. And swimming pool.
Yeah, we finally have the updated pool assessment for you for review tonight, and I'll go over that as well as the drafted pool community survey. Rather than go through the whole pool assessment, I'll give you a few highlights. Basically, most of those can be found in the summary at the beginning of the assessment. So if you remember, we had the initial assessment done back in 2009, knowing that a few years had passed and some of the code things have changed and come into effect that were not in existence at that point. We felt it was a good thing to take a look at the pool once again before we actually survey our residents and area residents outside of the city as well that use the pool, so that we know what we have as a baseline for our existing facility as we move forward with asking questions about how we should move into the future with either not having the facility, just repairing it, or maybe expanding it further. In the assessment, there's 5 main options that are listed by U.S. Aquatics for the pool facility. Those options are listed as follows. Number 1, they have the recommendation of, or an option, I should say, of what would be closing the outdoor pool. It would fill in the pool. 2 options are actually shown to keep the pool house or not to keep the pool house, and how that may or may not work into the ball field needs for that facility. I know there's talk that could be maybe used for locker rooms, less concessions, bathrooms, etc. So a couple of different options for that, but anywhere about in that $50,000 range to close the pool. That obviously mean we have no place for swim lessons, and people would have to go elsewhere for their swimming needs. Acknowledging that we do have Cedar Lake Regional Park with the beach at the lake. Option number 2 they list is repairing the outdoor pool, and I'll just, for rounding numbers' sake, call it a $500,000 project. This would not provide any new facilities other than taking the wading pool and turning that into a converted splash pad. Other than that, it would just be repairing and replacing things that are overdue for repair and or maintenance items. So wouldn't really add any new excitement to the pool or draw any more people in. Basically would keep what we have and keep that going forward. Option number 3, this is kind of a I don't know if you'd call it a midpoint between the renovation or the repair versus a brand new facility. Well, this option would be about $1.5 million. This would provide a expanded pool at the existing location. It would provide 1 water slide. If you noticed on the layout, they had a layout with a water slide shown. It also provides a 1,200 square foot splash pad, which is a zero depth entry for the younger age group with the spray features, and the report also showed a few photos of those as well. Other repairs and maintenance, obviously, that's required to be done, but would contain everything in the same site that we have it at today. Obviously, you'd still have the continued issues with the baseballs coming into the pool area that exists today, and obviously would not be expanded in size. As the consultant notes, in their opinion, the existing facility that we have isn't sized appropriately for where New Prague is today versus where it was 30 years ago. This would add a few amenities, obviously the swimming pool, etc. You'd probably get a few more users coming in up front, but that might dwindle after the initial sparkle wears off. But obviously would provide a little more amenities than what we have today. Option number 4 is kind of a different option, and it's not one that staff is very supportive of, I guess is the best way to put it, but it's an option nonetheless. It would essentially take the whole pool area, fill in the pool, and put a splash pad in its place. You generally do not charge money to get into a splash pad situation. You typically do not have very many, if any, staff. So that option, while being roughly $500,000, doesn't provide any additional amenities. It actually gets rid of the pool, and don't see that as a very viable option, although it was an option that our consultant wanted to suggest should that be a thing that people might want to consider for the survey. Number 5 is obviously a brand new outdoor aquatic facility, and we use that word aquatic facility, and I should explain that a little bit. It includes obviously a pool, but other aquatic amenities such as not just the pool, but water slides, climbing walls, and other activities that are associated with the pool, but not necessarily involve swimming per se, but obviously have water features associated with them. And they identify a cost of anywhere between, this is complete ballpark, between $4 and $5 million. We identified, just for the sake of the report, the site north of the existing pool where the armory currently sits. And the layout that they show is just an example from another community. It has absolutely no bearing on anything that would actually work for New Prague, but it was just rather to show physically there is room to support a facility there, and what would be chosen to be put in there would be entirely up to the city, but just to show that it would fit physically. So those are the options that are listed for the existing pool facility. And obviously, I think, Glenn, the costs for the pool from the 2009 assessment were the $300,000 range.
Yep.
So, you know, we're up closer to that $500,000 range at this point just for the repairs. So that gives you a little taste of how that's gone up, you know, roughly $200,000, and some of that had to do with just the pool getting older and other things needing replacement, and then a couple of new code items that have come into play during that time as well. I think the biggest one is probably the accessibility issue. We are providing the lift at the pool currently, but then other means of access, ramping, et cetera, was the other part of it. And a lot of that had to do with the wading pool, which essentially needs to go away if we do any further repair and turn it into a splash pad. So I don't know if you have any questions on the pool facility assessment. I could try to answer those, or Glenn could as well. Or I can move into the drafted survey questions if you want to do that.
One of the questions I have is obviously, you know, I've had people indicate, obviously, a community center type facility, which obviously is significantly more expensive. I think St. Cloud's doing a community center, and I just saw, I think it was $28 million is what, and I don't know what their community center is doing, but it was in the paper that they're going to start the project because they have, with their fundraising and donations and that stuff, they're like 75% have that covered. But you know, in reading the survey, I didn't really see anything. You know, obviously you're going to maybe get some comments regarding that. And I know this survey we wanted to do just kind of see what the city was looking at. But I suppose when we get into that joint
Right.
committee with the school district and their facility needs, which probably is based on what I hear is that we need another middle school in New Prague because it's full right now. Is that an opportunity to get an indoor pool at that time? I don't know, but.
And I think we left that off specifically from the discussion we had with the council previously about that, and waiting for that school facility committee to get together and meet, as we'd probably have to partner on that type of facility in all likelihood. Maybe not, but rather than muddy the water with us looking into that on our own, is to leave that for that discussion at that time. So.
Okay.
But I'm sure we will get comments in the survey about an outdoor or indoor pool. Excuse me.
Right. Yeah, that's really the only comment I had. I don't know if anyone has any other regarding the options or cost structures or. Okay. Well, why don't we get on into the survey part?
Yep. Oh, I should note one other thing. Excuse me, on the actual facility assessment. I do want to point out specifically that on average, we've been averaging overall between the city and the school about a $50,000 operation loss on the pool between city operation and the school programming of the pool. We had the aberration in 2013 of the pool heater in that chemical room that brought it up closer to $100,000 for that particular year. But we wanted to show that it's not making money currently. So just so everybody's clear of that it's not a moneymaker at this point, and actually we are subsidizing it. So moving on to the survey.
I don't think too many pools are money makers.
No, the U.S. Aquatics was very clear on that. Very few make more than cover half their costs with their revenue. So
Even if it was an aquatic facility, would it be the same story?
it would be pretty much the
Okay.
same story.
Yeah.
Yes. From what we've heard.
Yeah,
We could be
it's-
different, but.
No, that's what I've heard too, so it's the
Yep.
nature of the beast.
Yep. So moving on to the aquatic survey, these questions were developed, obviously, with various dialogue between staff and U.S. Aquatic staff. And obviously, they've done a number of these surveys and kind of at a outline that we used and tailored with them to our needs, and came up with a total of 27 questions. And at first, we thought, boy, this is a really long survey. Are people going to want to fill this out? But it really does ask a lot of good questions. A lot of things we wouldn't want to go back and survey again. We just don't want to over-survey anybody. If we get them to answer one, might as well get what we can at that point. It actually doesn't take very long to go through the survey. A lot of them are, multiple choice questions where you select one. I know we don't specifically get into listing on question 26, for example, the cost of each of the options, and the idea behind that, and this was a suggestion from U.S. Aquatics as well, was to try to gather people's true opinions without being skewed by what the cost might be. The cost and that whole end of it can be worked out with the pool committee and people's appetite for potential referendums if that's the route that this might go. But if we hear that people simply don't want that, then, that's a different direction the pool committee may take. The other thing we've done in here is we want to put the survey out to city residents and school district residents alike, because the school district is really our service area for the pool. Question number one allows us to break out the answers specifically between people that live in the corporate city limits and the people that do not. We do understand that a lot of people do not understand if they live in the corporate city limits or not. We get many phone calls every week from people that think they live in New Prague because they simply have a New Prague address when they don't live in the city limits. So that we hope people call and verify. And there's not much easier way to get around that, unfortunately. We hope that most people will understand if they do or do not live in the city limits. So that'll help us get maybe two sets of data. We still want to know who would use the pool and what their interests are, because they would be people bringing in obviously daily and or season pass type fees, but the residents are going to be the ones that would pay for it. And it was suggested actually by Councilmember Scripture, spoke to her before the meeting that questions 20 and 21 probably are only applicable to be answered by those that are in the city limits, as they would be the ones paying for a property tax increase. If this were a city-only endeavor, which it probably would be if it were an outdoor pool. So actually, that was a very good point to note, and we would probably suggest adding those questions only be answered if you're a city resident in the corporate limits. The school district has offered, I believe, a very good deal this time of year. They have some downtime. They offered to put together the mailing to all 6,200 households within the district at a cost of $4,100. $3,000 of that alone is for postage, and that cost includes their staff time for 2 people for about half a day to get those assembled. It includes the envelopes, it includes the paper and the printing. We certainly could not do that in staff, and we would have a few copiers tied up printing all those things. So they were more than happy to provide for it. They said this is about the best time of year they could do it. So short of that, we have obviously some time here for your input and thoughts on the survey questions and any modifications, additions, et cetera, that you'd like to do here tonight. Shooting to get it out July 1, give about a 3-week turnaround for July 21st. And obviously the paper copy will be mailed. We have set up a online survey that would be ready to go pending any changes here tonight that we could get turned on anytime after its approval here, and people could fill that out online if they would rather than fill out a paper copy as well. So I think with that performance measurement survey we did back in 2011, actually had a majority of the people just fill them out via the paper copy and return them to City Hall. I don't know if we'll skew younger in the demographic for this and get more filled out online. Either way, it doesn't matter. It'd be nice if most people did them online because it's already automatically tabulated, and the ones that aren't, U.S. Aquatics has to do those by hand, so that's included in their fee.
So the 6,200 households for the school district, is that list probably basically from tax information?
What they did was they have a database of all households that have enrolled students, and then in addition to that, they had to go back through the voter registration to get the full number of households in the district. Otherwise, we didn't want to just survey those that have children. That would be kind of skewing the survey. So we wanted to make sure we got everybody in that. We obviously, the whole time we've had we have our city database that utility bills go to, but we wanted to make sure we have it a little more encompassing because we have obviously many more users that come to the pool that aren't just residents. But the tax question, that would be key only for residents. Because they may very well be for a tax increase, but not have to pay for it. We kind of want to know there's a difference there.
So in this, if the survey goes out and we start getting paper, now how are we going to tabulate the paper thing? Are we just going to?
U.S. Aquatics actually will be tabulating those.
Okay, and that's part of the fee that we pay?
Part of their fee.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I think they like the idea of the online survey getting
I'm
a number
sure.
of those done. I don't know if we'll get 500 responses or 4,000. I mean, we really have no idea.
Because obviously, if someone answers number 1 resides outside the New Prague corporate limits, obviously, they shouldn't take in their, if someone by mistake answers 20 or 21 or whatever, Pat, that
Yep.
that they don't include that into this.
Yeah, and on the online one, we can set it up so if you answer a certain way to question 1, you will not see those other questions.
Yeah, it'll be grayed out where they can accept.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't understand why we can't separate those two and just have 2 distinct, one survey going just specifically to the New Prague residents, while either the upcoming group that's going to be in charge of the school district portion of it could send out another one, or even if we sent out another one to the residents instead of relying on them to check those 2 and then having to specifically state on Pat's questions.
Yep,
Whether or not they're willing to pay for it.
We talked about
break it down like that.
With the school district's database, they do not have broken down specifically who's in the city limits or not. That would actually be a manual check like I had done with the summer recreation data. That was very time-consuming to go through that, and that was a fraction of the 6,200 households that we're dealing with here. I think that was closer to about 1,000 different households. So it literally has to be manually done. They don't have the ability to know what's in the city limits or not for their mailing program that they do. They just know it's district, and it's included in there.
And why couldn't we just include this in our utility bill? Is there?
Well, we
that
could.
would go just to
We
the
could.
citizens?
We wanted to know, we talked about this internally with staff, that yes, we understand that the city residents would be the ones that have any tax implication on it.
Right.
But knowing that there are actually more users that come to the pool that are district-wide, that are users and have, an input, what they might want to see, but not necessarily pay for it. But that's why we need to still differentiate between the two.
True, but we're representative of just the city of New Prague.
Right.
Not the school district as a whole. And I'd feel a lot better if I had more reliable information just from the residents of New Prague, and then let the school district go out and survey their own or in conjunction with that.
Is there any way to take the two lists and purge them, and so then you know which ones are the city people?
Yep.
You know where I'm
I
going?
know what you're saying. Talking to the school district, they did not have a very easy way to do that. I know what you're getting at, and I know even at staff we're a little worried that people would answer the question accurately.
Right, because like you said, a lot of people don't know.
Right. And that's the thing with the school district, unless we can actually totally separate those out and have a different survey, we're going to run into that. And even with the online one, it's hard stopping people from filling it out, because you can't lock it down unless you put a password on there or something.
Right. Well,
I don't think that's the most important question to have answered, though, either. A lot of other important questions to get the flavor of what.
I personally think it should just be the residents that get the survey.
I agree too. I mean, that's who we represent.
That's who, yeah.
And with the tax implications that are going to be involved one way or another, I think there just seems like there should be a better way that we could actually get it out to just the residents, as opposed to relying on them and then getting false information.
Oh, we
back.
can mail it out to the residents. That's not the problem. We have that list. That would be utility billing customers. But getting the additional data of the other users, that's an important part too.
And I think that'll be important eventually. But, for our sake of the council, I mean, we're really only representing citizens of New Prague. And the school board
Yep.
will essentially be representing everybody else throughout the city, or throughout the area in the school district.
And if people answer that question, number one, accurately, we will have both sets of information at one time. That's what we're hoping for. I don't know that, I can't guarantee that.
I think
Sure.
it'd be close enough.
Short of that,
Survey, so.
Yeah, you usually probably only get 30%
that would be a really good return if we.
turn rate at the
had
best.
return.
And we could send it out with utility bills, and then it wouldn't cost $4,100 either, probably, right? Be a lot less.
Be a savings with that.
We are limited to the number of paper. I'd have to verify that we could actually fit that in utility bills, because this would be 2 pages front to back.
Yeah.
And depending on,
Well, it might increase
that
postage.
works. And I don't know that we could get it out by July, to
We
be
could
honest
leave
with you.
out Chuck's letter, nobody reads it anyways, so.
Well, that's, well,
The survey in
just
that
use it
night.
for next month after then.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I think it's important to get the opinion of the non-residents as to what they think they want. Because we know that it's not just city residents that use that pool.
Right?
And we have to rely upon other people to use it if we're gonna get some income from it.
Not only that, a lot of those people support a lot.
Exactly, they do, because they come in
What they
and,
want is still important,
right.
in my opinion.
And 2020 and 21 should give us a clue as to who's resident and who's not. I think U.S. Aquatics can differentiate that. Should be able to.
Yeah, we'd want to make that very clear on questions 21 and 22. On the online, they wouldn't get the option, but if they're filling out paper, highlight that and have them know that. And that should make them think twice, why do I really live in the city or not?
I agree.
I mean, you could put something, reside outside city limits, and then do not answer questions 21, 22. But, again,
If I was outside outside the community and, or the city, and I really wanted it, I'd vote yes, that I do,
Right.
to skew the numbers, and don't think that people won't think that.
Oh, and we could get that for
Just
residents.
residents are gonna pay for it, and
right, but if
the surrounding
if
area
people are
won't.
honest on number one, you're going to see, the results are going to show that people within this New Prague want this, and the people outside New Prague want that. So if it is, and it's going to be more skewed towards people with families, younger who are going to utilize it. And that's the other tough thing with this, is that you're going to have, obviously, what is it, 2/3 of the people who use our facilities, like ball fields and that stuff, come from outside outside the city limits, but yet we're the ones who built those parks and things like that.
So we're just trying to find out if the people that don't live in the city limits, if they're going to use it or not.
Yes, that is a very important part of that, to even see if there's the revenue support. If you don't have the user base, really no point in providing the
I think
facility.
that's more important to find out if they're gonna use it than worrying about if they're, I mean, most people don't wanna pay for anything, so we'll assume nobody. That's a safe assumption. But are they gonna use it if it's built for free?
The belief at this point from the consultant is that people are simply going elsewhere. We don't know where, and some of the questions to get at that, are they going to Waseca, are they going to Faribault, are they going to, those other facilities? And, that'll help see what people why they're not using our pool and where they're going. 'Cause there's not a high number of open swimmers at the pool currently. Swim lessons is good, but that's for lack of another option, obviously, at this point. And, lack of amenities at the pool is probably one of the main reasons that people don't come here versus leaving and going to other facilities.
I know. I mean,
But, until we survey, we really,
my family's like that. They have been for 5 years. If they aren't going there for a lesson, they are going to Faribault, Shakopee, or Apple Valley. They're all nice places. And they'll drive there for a whole afternoon because they stay busy the whole time. You end up, all the kids that end up staying here are the ones that don't have parents at home, so they can only bike so far, so they come here.
Okay.
I move we mail it out with the, whatever
Revisions.
the revisions that we,
2021 only for
correct.
corporate limit residents.
And you also want to utilize the school.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion to mail out the survey to the school district list.
Hold on, Pat's got a question, I think.
I just have one more thing. I know I talked to Ken about it, that I'm not quite sure if you don't have this, you have to go online, right, to read the facility assessment project study. So if you don't go on there and you just start reading this, I don't know how many people know what an aquatic facility is, especially older people. I don't think I'd know, I'd probably have to look it up or something.
Like I said, it's a pool with water slides and area to sunbathe or other activities, yeah, something like that.
Ken, the online portion of that survey, are they limited to just voting once? I mean,
Yeah.
you could skew those numbers either side if
We
you were
would-
somebody that was adamant for it or adamant against it and continue to vote. Is that-
Yes, the online survey would be set up, and it's defaulted, and we can change it, but it would be defaulted that if you have cookies enabled on your computer, it knows that your computer
Has
you
already-
already voted.
Okay.
There are ways around that, and people are smart enough to figure that out. They
Three
can do
different
that.
There's a very
computers.
small percentage of them.
Right.
But yeah, that would be the way around that. But yes, it would be set up for one vote per computer, which would help with the one household response.
Sure.
It's not
Unless they're
foolproof.
voting from work.
Well, yeah, we're
Yeah,
every,
you could vote at work. We
every
won't say-
sixth or
suggest
seventh
that.
grader that wants a new aquatic center,
They
that
aren't
can
that,
figure it out.
they aren't that motivated to go online and vote a survey more than once.
All right, you answered my question. We can move on. Let's go.
Okay. So I get a motion. Okay, go ahead.
Never mind.
No, I got a motion by Mark to do the school list. Will you amend it to add a definition?
Sure.
Add a definition in the introduction?
I think it would help.
Yeah, to explain what an aquatic center is versus just a pool. Okay, and using the school list and incurring the $4,100 expense, correct? On your
Well,
motion?
Yeah, but part of that was gonna get, the school was taking some of that up, right?
No,
No.
no, that's, we're going to take that out of our contingency fund. They're going to
We're
do the
paying for it,
work.
but they're gonna do the work.
They're doing the
Oh,
work.
yeah,
Yes.
that's fine.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay, and then I got a second by Dave Brusick. Dave, any other comments before we vote? Have any, Pat?
Well, what is the name of the place?
Aquatic center? Or
Aquatic.
The ones that's
Aquatics?
doing the survey.
U.S.
U.S. Aquatics.
Oh, U.S. Aquatics. And they think we should survey the non-residents?
Yeah, they believe that's important to know our user area, which is, 15 to 20 mile radius around. It's good to
Okay.
know that information. They're the customers as well.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you. Thanks, Ken. I know it took a lot of work on this thing, but
It'll be interesting to see what we hear back.
yes. Next on the agenda, I don't know if you're taking it, Ken, or,
Yep, I'll take the ordinance amendment here. Back on June 2nd, the council was introduced to the amendment to ordinance, City Code Section 5210, that the amendment would clarify that new accounts, builders and landlords are billed using their actual monthly water consumption up to, but not to exceed the citywide residential 3-month, which is November to January average of water consumption, plus a monthly base fee. So that was the language that was added, that it is up to but not to exceed that citywide residential average. And then finally, the end of that, which isn't changing, is that until the next sewer calculation period, November through January, and then that customer will be billed their 3-month winter average usage. Patty Solheid and Bruce Reimers were here at the last meeting to answer any questions that you had. The language was put forth for a second reading here tonight with no changes from that initial meeting. So they're looking for approval here tonight, and they would get that moving forward for publication.
so this is a second reading?
This would be a second reading and adoption.
Okay. Any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Dave Brusick to approve the new language, second by Pat Scripture. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda items? Dozinski is in here, yes.
Yeah.
And what was
I
your,
have a question about that. We don't have like how much we give to them in this paperwork.
I think in the past, I can't remember, wasn't there a limit of, and I don't remember the,
So it doesn't need to be in here, you think, or?
I think this is more just a permit. This, I don't think is,
Permit, this isn't like,
the permission to hold it. I don't think that,
Okay,
I don't think it's the point where we're sharing the cost, with police and
Yeah, I
clean
don't
up on
I
that?
think Mark needed this before he could actually go and ask MinDOT for the permission to shut down the highway.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
that's what this
It's
is.
a two-step deal, if I
Yep.
remember right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They usually come, Chamber usually comes back
Yeah,
later in the
usually.
year with their,
Yep.
Usually they.
Their costs that they.
their cost and
Yep.
their final
Right.
plan.
This
so
is
that we
just to
can-
get permission to go ahead and
Close.
go forward with getting MinDOT's permission of putting in the permit to close down Highway 19 or Main Street for this function.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sort of looked like an agreement, because there's a lot of things listed, but,
Yeah. We'll put a note on that. Mary Jo, make a note on that to make sure that we approve the cost sharing on Dojinki. I know, I don't recall the exact dollar amount, but I know we had a limit on it and that. Any other questions of consent agenda?
well, and also on that thing too, says they're requesting permission to mark Central Avenue North and South, no parking beginning Thursday. Do they do the south too? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because they got.
Food stands.
There's food
Food
stands there,
Yep.
that's always busy.
So we mark it Thursday late afternoon as no parking after 4 a.m. So that they can still park there Thursday night. And then right away Friday morning, we change that no parking 4 a.m. to no parking for the day, for the half block.
Yep.
Yeah, just up to the alley.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Motion by Pat Scripture, second by Mark Bartuszczyk. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Miscellaneous. Glenn, you have anything? How's the street project going? Wet?
It's wet. It's actually going better than, it could be going better, but they got curb and gutter in on these first two blocks. They've got subcut all the way down to First Avenue Northeast, including part of First Avenue Northeast. They got all the utilities in the rest of the way, so if Mother Nature would cooperate, then they could subcut all the way to Columbus Avenue and start sealing this thing up a little bit. Started on the alley, it started on School Street with storm sewer and sanitary for the church that was existing, and then also started on the storm coming from School Street heading to the north towards Second Street on the alley.
Is that all going to be completed before the church festival?
It should be,
The alley, I mean, in that area?
if Mother Nature
Well,
starts cooperating.
Well, you better talk to Father Clinton.
I know.
Get on the rosary beads.
Yeah, we'll have to get on a
Long
different
time,
agenda
yeah,
here,
they
I
better
think.
be done. My God, that's like 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Other than that, we got the ADA left installed at the swimming pool. There's still a little bit of work to do, but that did come in finally, and it is installed there, and we'll have training for the lifeguards here shortly.
Is that where the roped off area is in that
Exactly.
corner?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So that's up and running. That's about it.
Okay. Ken?
I don't have anything additional.
Oh, come on.
Nope.
Mary Jo? I know you're holding your side of the room up, and you've been doing really well, so I appreciate it. Patrick, you got anything? Okay, good. Pat, you have anything?
Everything? Nope.
Okay.
I'm going up to St. Cloud tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. Pat is going to represent New Prague. Make sure you vote for, in the, we have one vote at the League of Minnesota.
Do you have a preference, everybody?
Use your best judgment. So Pat's going to represent us at the League of Minnesota Conference this week. That's great.
None.
Then, Sean?
I just had a quick question for Glenn. The sidewalks on Main Street, or the crossing, what do you call them, the crossing?
Crosswalks?
Crosswalks.
Yep.
Thank you. Have those been repainted, or are they on the schedule to be
They
repainted?
are on the schedule to be repainted,
Do we
yes.
have a date for it? They're pretty faded, and I just had somebody mention to find out.
I wouldn't be able to give you a specific date. We typically will try to wait till after seal coating, which is done now.
Okay.
And then we start striping, and we try to stripe everything at the same time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else? John?
No, that's it. No,
Okay.
I just
Mark?
had that question.
I'm good.
I'm good. I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got second by Sean Ryan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? We're out of here. Thank you, everyone.